You said you needed help on the farm, Kyra said, ears low, voice trembling. Then take me. Just feed my sister. Darren froze. Under the burning suns, a proud foxwoman offered herself for bread, and somehow, he was the one who felt small. If you love HFY sci-fi tales of compassion and courage, hit subscribe. New stories every day. The desert colony shimmered under twin suns, every breath a dry rasp of heat and grit. A lonely outpost, half metal, half dream, stood on the edge of survival, its hydro towers long rusted, its people long hardened. Darren lived there, fixing what others abandoned, farming dust and praying for rain that never came. Then one day, he found them. Two figures knelt by his withered melon patch, fox-eared, sun-browned, and heartbreakingly out of place. The older sister's orange hair gleamed like fire beneath the sunlight, her tail curled protectively around a smaller, trembling figure. The child, Tali, was crying softly, clutching a shriveled vine as if tears could coax it to bloom. Don't cry, little one, the woman whispered, her voice raw. We'll find something. When Darren spoke, his voice startled them both. That's my field you're trying to resurrect. The older sister turned sharply, eyes fierce with embarrassment and hunger. Her dress was little more than tattered cloth, still, she straightened her back like a queen. Then maybe you should feed it better, she said. Darren blinked. He hadn't heard humor in weeks, much less defiance wrapped in desperation. Name's Darren, he muttered. And you two are? Kyra, she said cautiously. And my sister Tali. She hesitated, glancing at the little one. We haven't eaten in 2 days. Something in her tone, pride and exhaustion twisted together, hit him harder than the heat ever could. He should have told them to leave. Instead, he found himself opening the workshop door. Come on, he said. There's stew. And if you're lying about being hungry, I'll make you finish my repairs instead. Tali's eyes widened. Stew? Real stew? Don't make me regret this, kid. Kyra hesitated a moment longer, tail flicking in wary arcs. You don't even know us. I know hungry, Darren said simply. And I know work when I see it in someone's eyes. Inside, the air was cooler, thick with the smell of metal and dust. Tali darted in first, marveling at every blinking light. Kyra followed, slower, shoulders squared like she was marching into a deal she didn't want to make. When the stew was served, she wouldn't eat until her sister was full. And when she finally looked up from the empty bowl, there was something unguarded in her eyes, gratitude laced with confusion, and something else Darren couldn't name. That night, under the soft hum of solar lanterns, he found her standing outside again, staring at the desert. Her tail brushed the dirt, her voice small but steady. You said you needed help on this farm, she said. Then take me. I'll clean, I'll cook, I'll fix, whatever you need. Just don't send us away. Darren stared at her, at the child asleep behind her, and then at the cracked earth stretching beyond his fence. All right, he said finally. You work for food. But you're not selling yourself, Foxgirl. Kyra smiled faintly, sad, tired, but real. Then you're the first human to ever say that. The wind carried her words away into the dusk, and for the first time in a long while, the lonely edge of the world didn't feel so empty. Morning came slow on the edge of nowhere. Darren's farm, the half-acre of stubborn life he called his kingdom, woke to the creak of wind turbines and the faint hum of the irrigation pump pretending to work. Kyra was already outside. He didn't expect that. Most refugees who came through just ate, slept, and vanished before dawn. But there she was, kneeling in the sand, carefully brushing dust off brittle melon vines like a mother tending a wounded child. Her long red hair shimmered faintly in the heat, catching glints of copper from the twin suns. You're up early, Darren said, stepping onto the porch with a mug of rehydrated coffee sludge. Kyra didn't look up. You said we work for food. So I'm working. You don't even know what these are. She sniffed at a melon leaf. They smell dead, he sighed. They are dead. Then you're not a very good farmer. He blinked, half offended, half amused. You're mouthy for someone who begged for stew last night. Desperate, not begging, she corrected, tail flicking behind her. There's a difference. Tolly peeked out from the doorframe, her small face lighting up when she saw Darren. Human man! You have more stew? Darren snorted. You mean breakfast? Yeah. But only if you help your sister. Tolly saluted solemnly. I can guard the plants. Kyra smirked softly. She'll talk them to death if that counts. That was the moment it started, something quieter than friendship, too hesitant to be anything else. The odd warmth of two people who had no reason to trust each other, and a child whose laughter made the rusted place feel almost alive. By midday, Darren showed Kyra how the irrigation valves worked. She listened closely but didn't take orders well. Twist it counterclockwise, he said. Like this? She spun it hard. A geyser of recycled water blasted them both. Darren sputtered, drenched. Clockwise! Kyra wiped water from her face and laughed, an unguarded, ringing sound that startled him. You didn't say how much! Tolly clapped from the fence. You broke the sky! That evening, Kyra cooked badly. Darren chewed cautiously. What is this? Desert stew, she said proudly. I improvised. He had the chunks floating in murky broth. With what? Mostly optimism. He nearly choked laughing. Foxgirl, if optimism were edible, we'd both be fat. Her ears twitched, but she smiled. Then maybe we'll get there someday. Later, when Tolly slept curled up under a blanket made from spare tarp, Darren found Kyra staring at the stars through the cracked roof. She sat cross-legged, tail curled tight around her knees. You didn't have to stay, he said quietly. I wasn't serious about the job. I know, she murmured. But she needs a place where her belly doesn't ache. He hesitated, leaning against the doorway. And you? What do you need? Kyra tilted her head, amber eyes catching the lantern light. A reason to stop running. Maybe this will do. Darren didn't reply, but something in his chest tightened. He told himself it was sympathy, maybe pity, but deep down he knew better. There was a sharpness to her, a fire he hadn't seen in anyone since before the droughts came. That night, as the turbines groaned and sand whispered against the walls, he listened to the faint sound of her humming an old fox lullaby. The melody carried through the cracks like a ghost of another world, wild, mournful, but stubbornly alive. For the first time in months, Darren dreamed, not of repairs or debts or isolation, but of green vines pushing through red dirt, and of laughter echoing through an empty farmhouse. The next morning, he found a note scrawled in messy handwriting on scrap paper. We fixed the east valve. It leaks less now. Also, Tolly says stew for breakfast again. She's wrong. He smiled despite himself, rubbing at his jaw. Fox girls, he muttered. Gonna be the death of me. From outside came a cheerful yell. We heard that. And somewhere in the desert breeze, the dry edge of the world softened, just a little. Darren didn't know what he expected when he agreed to let two fox folk live on his land, but it definitely wasn't this. By the third morning, he woke to the sound of clattering metal and a string of very creative curses drifting in from the workshop. He stumbled in, half-dressed and half-awake, to find Kyra standing on a stool, tail puffed out like a wildfire, holding a wrench upside down. I said loosen the bolt, he grumbled. I did. No, you. He squinted. You're tightening it. Kyra froze mid-motion, eyes darting between the bolt and him. Ah. So your kind has backward bolts. Typical human design flaw. That's not. He started, but stopped when Tolly popped up from under the table, covered in grease, proudly holding a screwdriver. I fixed the spinny part. Darren sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Great. Now we have 3 broken parts instead of 1. Kyra grinned, ears perking. Progress. He wanted to be annoyed, but her smile was contagious. The desert was a cruel place, dry, relentless, humorless, and yet she found laughter in every failure, as if mocking misery itself was a form of survival. Over the next week, The house became less quiet and more chaotic. Tali followed him everywhere, asking endless questions. Why do humans hide their ears? Why do your tails look so short? Why don't you wag when you're happy? Because humans don't have tails, kid. She gasped, horrified. You're defective. Kyra's laugh nearly made him drop his wrench. When work paused, Kyra helped in the garden. She was graceful and quick, until something distracted her. One afternoon, Darren looked up from calibrating the solar grid to find her crouched beside a melon vine, whispering intently to it. What are you doing? He asked, wary. Encouraging it, she said seriously. Fox folk talk to growing things. They like praise. He deadpanned. It's a melon, not a puppy. Everything grows better when it's loved. She shot back, tail flicking with confidence. He wanted to argue, but that night, one of the shriveled vines actually sprouted a new bud. Coincidence, or maybe Fox magic? He didn't ask. It wasn't all laughter, though. Sometimes Kyra went quiet, especially when food ran low, or when Tali coughed in her sleep. She'd sit outside by the dunes, staring at the moons, whispering something in her native tongue. Darren pretended not to notice, but once, he left an extra portion of stew by her seat without a word. The next morning, he found his boots polished and neatly placed by the door. Neither mentioned it. Still, comedy found them again. When Darren repaired the irrigation pump, Kyra insisted she could sense the right wire by instinct. The explosion of sparks that followed sent her sprawling backward into his arms. You're fine, he muttered, setting her upright. Her ears twitched, flustered. I meant to do that. Testing the reflexes of your... She gestured vaguely. Primitive machine. Tali peeked in, saw the scorch marks, and yelled. Kyra broke the sky again. Kyra groaned. Tali, sweet sun above. Darren laughed so hard he nearly dropped his wrench again. You two are going to bankrupt my patience. And yet, Kyra teased, you haven't sent us away. He froze. The joke hit deeper than she meant. No, he said softly. I haven't. For a moment neither spoke. Only the hum of machines filled the silence, the rhythm oddly gentle between them. That night, Kyra cleaned her claws by the lantern glow while Darren mended torn sleeves. You're different from the others, she said finally. Most humans don't share food without price. Maybe I just don't like seeing people starve. She studied him with unreadable eyes. That's not how most humans survive. Darren met her gaze. Then maybe that's why most humans end up alone. Her ears lowered slightly, expression softening. The firelight caught the edges of her fur, painting gold around her shoulders. She smiled faintly. Then I suppose you're not like most. He didn't know what to say to that. So he just mumbled something about early mornings and turned away, pretending the warmth in his chest came from the lantern. Outside, the desert wind sighed through the turbines. Inside, laughter, quiet conversation, and the smell of bad stew filled a once-empty home. For the first time in years, Darren realized he didn't dread tomorrow. He looked at the two fox folk asleep in the corner, and felt a thought he hadn't dared in a long time. Maybe this is what home feels like. The colony noticed. They always did. Words spread faster than sandstorms. About the human who took in a foxwoman and her pup. Some called Darren soft. Others said he was desperate. A few muttered worse things. But he didn't care much about gossip. He'd learned long ago that survival made everyone a little cruel. Kyra, on the other hand, found the whispers entertaining. They think I'm your pet, she announced one morning, striding into the kitchen with mock outrage. Darren looked up from his terminal, mid-sip of bitter coffee. They what? Apparently you bought me cheap. Her tail flicked like a metronome of irritation and amusement. So congratulations, Master Farmer. I'm officially your scandal. He groaned. That's not, Kyra, please tell me you didn't say anything back. Oh, I did. She grinned wickedly. Told them I bite. Tali nearly choked on her fruit bar laughing. Wonderful, Darren muttered. Now half the town thinks I'm running a private menagerie. Kyra leaned closer, eyes glinting. Only half? Her humor was sharper than her claws sometimes, but it cut through the heat, the dust, and his cynicism like a cool breeze. That afternoon, they drove the crawler out to the old irrigation trench. Kyra insisted on helping, even though the machinery weighed twice as much as she did. She was surprisingly strong, quick hands, graceful balance, but completely reckless. "Don't stand there!" Darren yelled as she climbed the maintenance rail. "I've got it!" she called, tail flicking like a flag of rebellion. The pipe burst open, splashing her head to toe. She blinked, dripping. "I had it," he snorted. "You're impossible." "You're slow," she countered. They spent the rest of the afternoon laughing and bickering while fixing valves and clearing sand filters. For the first time in years, Darren didn't feel like he was patching something doomed to break again. He felt, absurdly, like it might actually work. Later, as the twin suns sank into the dunes, Kyra stood by the reservoir, staring at her reflection. "It's strange," she murmured. "In my village, water was holy. We used to leave offerings by the springs. Here it's just another broken machine." Darren leaned beside her, watching the rust-colored sky ripple across the water. "Machines can be holy too," he said. "When they keep people alive." She looked at him then, really looked, and smiled softly. "You sound like one of us." He shrugged. "Maybe I'm defective." That earned a quiet laugh. Back at the house, Tolly sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by tiny trinkets. "Kyra taught me fox songs," she beamed. Kyra's ears perked. "You promised not to sing the one about the chicken thief." Tolly ignored her and began anyway, the melody bright and ridiculous. Darren couldn't help but grin as Kyra buried her face in her hands. "Don't encourage her," Kyra mumbled. "I think it's catchy," Darren said. Her tail swatted his leg lightly. "Traitor." As laughter filled the small house, Darren realized something had changed. The place didn't feel like a bunker anymore. It felt lived in. Still, there were moments between the jokes where silence stretched too long, where he'd catch Kyra watching the horizon, eyes distant. One night, he found her sitting by the water tank, the stars painting her fur in silver. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. She didn't turn. "The wind sounds like my mother's flute when it passes the dunes." He sat beside her quietly. "She died during the famine," Kyra continued. "I tried to keep Tolly fed. Sold what I could. Then there was nothing left to sell except—" She gestured vaguely toward herself. "Us." Darren's hands tightened around his knees. "You shouldn't have had to." "I didn't have a choice," she said simply. "But you gave me one. You didn't even know it." He swallowed hard. "You don't owe me anything, Kyra." Her ears twitched, and for once, there was no sarcasm, just warmth. "Maybe not. But I still want to earn it." A moment passed, too long, too quiet. He tried to look away, but she smiled faintly, eyes glowing in the moonlight. "You humans, you hide your hearts well. And you foxes wear yours on your tails." She laughed, low and musical. "Maybe that's why we wag so much?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "Go get some rest, fox girl." When she rose, her tail brushed lightly against his arm, a small, unthinking gesture, but one that lingered longer than it should have. That night, Darren lay awake listening to the desert hum. He'd built his life on isolation, silence, and work. But now the quiet wasn't comfortable anymore. It was filled with the echo of her laugh, the flick of her tail, and the faint scent of spice and sun in the air. He told himself it was nothing. Just gratitude. Just companionship. Just survival. But when dawn came, he found himself smiling before he even opened his eyes. The dry season broke with a storm. For months the sky had been nothing but white heat, but now clouds rolled in thick and violet, thunder growling low across the horizon. The air smelled of static and dust. Darren stepped outside, half afraid the sudden moisture would scare off the crops he'd coaxed from dead soil. Kyra, of course, loved it. She stood barefoot in the mud, arms outstretched, laughing as cold rain plastered her hair to her face. Tolly spun circles around her, squealing. "It's wet! It's wet!" Like the concept of rain was pure magic. "You'll catch a fever," Darren called from the porch. Kyra turned, eyes bright, tail whipping behind her. "Then I'll be happily sick." A gust of wind answered with another sheet of rain. She darted up the steps, dripping everywhere, and grinned at him. "Come on, farmer. When's the last time you danced in the rain?" "I don't dance," he said flatly. She flicked her ears. "That sounds like a challenge." Before he could protest, she tugged his hand, and somehow, without quite understanding how it happened, he was standing in the rain beside her, boots sinking into wet sand, her laughter cutting through thunder like sunlight through clouds. For a brief, impossible moment, the world didn't feel broken. The next day brought the smell of wet soil and new life. Green shoots pushed through cracks in the field, tiny, defiant miracles. Darren caught Kyra staring at them, her expression soft and unreadable. "You see?" he said quietly. "You didn't need to sell yourself. You just needed rain." She smiled, small and wistful. "Rain's easier to find than kindness." He looked away. "Maybe it shouldn't be." As the crops began to grow, so did the rumors. A trader stopped by one afternoon, smirking when he saw Kyra working the irrigation line. "Didn't know you were hiring fox help now, Darren," the man sneered. "She working off a debt or keeping your bed warm?" Before Darren could react, Kyra stepped forward, tail flicking sharply. "Both," she said sweetly. "If it helps your tiny mind sleep better." The trader's smirk faltered. Darren nearly choked. "Kyra!" She winked. "Relax. He'll think twice before gossiping again." And she was right. But when the man left, her humor faded. "They'll never stop seeing me like that," she murmured. "Let them talk," Darren said. "They're not the ones feeding you." Her gaze lifted. "No. But someday I'd like to feed myself." Weeks passed. The garden thrived. Tolly grew rounder in the cheeks, happier, louder. She'd chase sand lizards across the yard while Kyra hummed old folk songs and Darren fixed the solar pumps. It became a rhythm, 3 lives stitched together by routine and laughter. One evening, as the sun set red and gold, Kyra sat on the fence, feet dangling, tail curling lazily. "You've changed this place," she said softly. "It feels alive." He smiled. "That's mostly you too." "No," she said, glancing at him sidelong. "You gave it a heart again." He didn't know how to answer that. Her words made something tighten in his chest, an ache he didn't recognize. That night, after Tolly had fallen asleep, Kyra lingered by the door. "I should leave soon," she said quietly. Darren froze mid-step. "What?" "Tolly's healthy again." The rains came. "You've done more than enough." Her voice wavered despite her attempt to sound casual. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not." Her ears twitched. "You've got your own life, Darren. People already whisper. I don't want to cost you your reputation." He gave a dry laugh. "Reputation? You think I had one to begin with?" That earned a small, reluctant smile, but she didn't look up. "Still, it'd be easier if we disappeared before people start asking questions." He stepped closer. "Easier for who?" Her eyes met his then, sharp, vulnerable, searching. "For me." The words hung in the air, fragile and heavy. He wanted to tell her to stay, to say the thought of the house without her laughter made the walls feel empty again. But the words wouldn't come. So he just said, "You don't have to run anymore." Kyra's voice was barely a whisper. "Maybe I don't know how to stop." Her tail brushed against his hand, light as breath, and then she turned away, walking out into the moonlight. He watched until her silhouette vanished into the dunes, heart pounding, unsure if she'd come back. But at dawn, when he opened the door, she was already in the field, humming softly while watering the vines. She didn't look up when he approached, only said, "The melons are growing well." He smiled faintly. "So's everything else." For a moment she met his gaze, and something unspoken passed between them, warm, uncertain, and alive. And though either said it, both knew she hadn't stayed for the food anymore. She'd stayed because she wanted to. The storm that gave them rain also gave something else: attention. Out beyond the dunes, scavenger bands had been tracking fresh water signals. When they saw a tiny farm suddenly light up green on the old colony grid, they came like vultures that smelled blood. Darren noticed the warning first, a faint blip on the perimeter sensors, moving too fast to be wind. 3 crawlers, he muttered. Armed. Kyra's ears flicked. Bandits? Yeah. And they're headed straight for us. He grabbed the old rifle from the wall, checked the charge, and shoved a sidearm toward her. Hide Tolly in the cellar and stay low. Kyra's tail lashed once, fear, anger, both. You think I'm going to cower while they take everything we've built? Kyra! She was already gone, sprinting into the night. By the time he caught up, she was crouched behind the irrigation tanks, eyes glowing in the dark. Rain still clung to the sand, turning each step into mud. The crawlers came over the ridge, headlights cutting through the dust like knives. Foxgirl, he hissed. This isn't a story you win with teeth. She grinned without looking at him. Then good thing I've got claws and brains. When the first bandit climbed off the crawler, Kyra darted forward, fast as a shadow. A quick flash, a tail whipping through dust, and the man's rifle clattered away. Darren fired a warning shot over the others, forcing them behind cover. It wasn't a battle, just chaos, heat, light, sand, and shouted curses. A pulse grenade went off near the hydro lines, and the smell of burning plastic filled the air. Darren charged forward anyway, grabbing a spanner instead of his gun when the power cell died. One blow, two, then a third, metal against metal, survival against greed. He didn't see the bandit behind him until Kyra slammed into the man from the side, snarling, her claws scraping the armor plates. The bandit swung back, catching her shoulder with a blade. She yelped, stumbled, then bit down on his wrist and twisted. The fight ended in dust and silence. The crawlers limped away, engines whining. Darren knelt beside her, heart hammering. You're bleeding. Just a scratch. She tried to sound casual, but her tail trembled. He tore a strip from his sleeve and pressed it against the wound. You scared the hell out of me. Her smile was weak but bright. Told you I'd bite. For a long moment they stayed like that, rain dripping from the gutters, the desert smelling of scorched metal and ozone, his hand against her shoulder as if the world might fall apart if he let go. Then Tolly's voice broke the stillness. Is it over? Kyra turned, forcing steadiness into her tone. It's over, little one. Darren met her gaze. You saved us. She shook her head. No. We saved us. By morning, smoke rose from the ruined pump house. The damage was bad, but not fatal. Darren started repairs while Kyra, arm bandaged, coaxed Tolly back into laughter by painting little fox faces on broken drone parts. Later, when the sun dipped low, he found her leaning against the fence, staring at the endless red horizon. You should have stayed inside, he said softly. If I'd stayed inside, she replied, you'd be dead. He couldn't argue. He only stepped closer until their shoulders brushed. You're troubled, you know that? Her ears flicked, amused. Then why are you smiling? Because for once trouble was on my side. She laughed, quiet, exhausted, beautiful, and for a fleeting heartbeat the war-torn colony felt like home again. By nightfall, the wind had gone still. The storm clouds were gone too, leaving only a quiet sky and a faint hum of damaged machinery. Darren sat on the edge of the workbench, shirt torn and streaked with dried blood, trying to fix the solar regulator with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Kyra appeared in the doorway, arm wrapped in a sling she'd made from his spare jacket. You're supposed to be resting, she said softly. So are you, he muttered. We've both got bad habits. She crossed the floor, tail dragging faintly behind her. You're stubborn. Occupational hazard of staying alive. Kyra picked up a rag, dipped it in clean water, and knelt in front of him. Let me see. He frowned. It's fine. You said that about the irrigation pump, and it exploded. He hesitated, then sighed, letting her pull the fabric aside. The gash along his ribs wasn't deep, but it was ugly, blackened from a pulse burn. She cleaned it carefully, fingers light against his skin. Every touch stung, but he didn't move. You humans are built strange, she murmured, eyes focused on her work. Soft on the outside, hard on the inside. Foxes are the opposite, he said. Sharp teeth, softer hearts. That earned him a small, tired smile. You keep saying things that sound like compliments. Maybe I mean them. Kyra paused, hands stilling for a moment. Then she finished wrapping the bandage and sat back on her heels, meeting his gaze. You could have died tonight. So could you. I've been ready for that before. Her voice was quiet now, raw. But when I saw them hit you, something in me stopped thinking. He swallowed. You're not supposed to throw yourself at a man with a plasma knife. Then maybe you shouldn't make me care whether you live. The words hung between them, fragile and electric. Outside, the wind sighed through the half-broken turbines. Inside, the workshop lights flickered, washing them both in pale blue glow. Darren's pulse beat in his ears too loud. Kyra! She shook her head, looking away. Don't. You don't owe me anything for this. You gave me shelter, food, kindness. That's enough. That's not what I was going to say. She looked back, curious, uncertain. He exhaled slowly. When you first showed up here, I thought you were just another mouth to feed. I didn't expect. He gestured around helplessly. Any of this. The noise. The laughter. The life. You changed everything. Her tail twitched, uncertain. You don't mean that. I do, he said simply. You didn't sell yourself to me, Kyra. You saved me from this place. For a long moment she just stared at him, expression unreadable. Then she laughed softly, but there was no mockery in it this time. You humans, she whispered, always trying to fix things that aren't broken. Maybe that's how we love, he said. Her breath caught, then she stood, stepping closer until their faces were inches apart. Her voice was almost a whisper. Then you'd better learn to love carefully, Darren. Because foxes don't know how to stop once they start. He didn't move, didn't breathe. The air between them trembled. And then she kissed him. It wasn't the desperate kind born of fear, it was slow, tentative, like testing the strength of something new. His hand rose to her shoulder, careful of her wound. Her tail brushed his leg, warm and trembling. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling like fools. Was that a thank you? He asked. An apology, she said, still catching her breath. For nearly getting you killed. He grinned faintly. You're forgiven. Kyra laughed, then winced at her shoulder. Good. Because I'm not cooking tomorrow. You're on stew duty. He chuckled. We'll starve. Then at least we'll starve together. She leaned her forehead against his, eyes closing. For once, there were no walls, no debts, no pretending. Just two people who'd been broken by the same world, finding something worth staying for in each other. Outside, the wind began to rise again, scattering sparks across the sand, tiny, stubborn lights refusing to die. And in that quiet, Darren realized something simple and terrifying. He didn't want to survive without her anymore. By sunrise, the colony knew. 3 crawlers had limped back to the outpost during the night, full of wounded bandits babbling about a foxwoman and a mad human farmer who fought them off with nothing but scrap metal and grit. The gossip spread faster than plasma fire. By the time Darren and Kyra stepped out of the workshop, half the settlement was already heading their way. Tolly ran to the porch, eyes wide. Darren, there's people coming! Lots of them! He wiped his hands on a rag and gave Kyra a quick glance. Stay close. They'll want answers. Or someone to blame, she murmured. The crowd reached the fence, a mix of humans and foxfolk, traders and miners, faces hard and suspicious. The colony marshal, a thick-set woman named Rena, pushed to the front, rifle slung over her shoulder. Word is you two started a firefight out here, she said flatly. Darren met her gaze. Word's half right. Bandits came for the farm. We finished it. Rena's eyes shifted to Kyra, lingering on her tail, the sling on her arm. And you used a non-citizen in combat? She used herself, Darren said sharply. Saved my life. A murmur rolled through the crowd. Someone muttered, He's protecting her. Another hissed, Should have turned the foxes in when he could. Kyra's ears lowered, tail coiling tight. We didn't ask for this, she said quietly. We just wanted to live. Rena looked between them, weighing every word. You know harboring unregistered species is illegal under the colony charter. Then write a new charter, Darren snapped. Because I'm not throwing her out. The marshal's jaw tightened. You're willing to risk your land for that? He stepped closer, voice steady. I'm willing to risk it for them. The crowd stirred again, some disbelieving, some almost admiring. Rena stared at him a long moment before finally sighing. Fine. You keep the peace out here, and I'll mark this as a border defense incident. But if the board asks questions, you're on your own. Always have been, he said. When the marshal turned to leave, Kyra spoke softly. Thank you? Rena paused. Don't thank me, Foxgirl. Just don't make me regret it. When the crowd dispersed, Kyra stood in the doorway, looking out over the trampled sand. Her voice trembled just slightly. You defied your own people for me. For us, he corrected. She turned, tail brushing the doorframe. You keep saying that. U.S. Like we belong together. He smiled faintly. Maybe we do. For a heartbeat, she said nothing. Then her ears dipped, and she laughed softly, half disbelief, half joy. You're a fool, Darren. Wouldn't be the first time I've been called that. Then I suppose I'm a fool too. That evening, the colony sent a small crew to help repair the damages. Darren tried to refuse, but Kyra elbowed him hard enough to bruise. Let them. You've done enough alone. Even Rena showed up later with supplies. Heard your irrigation lines are toast, she grumbled. Can't have half the valley drying up because one idiot decided to play hero. Darren smirked. Appreciate the concern, Marshal. Kyra stood beside him, arms crossed, tail flicking proudly. He's not just a hero, she said. He's my partner. Rena blinked, then gave a slow, tired smile. You two are going to be trouble, aren't you? Guaranteed, Kyra said. By the time the sun set, the farm was alive with voices again. Humans and foxfolk worked side by side, patching leaks, laughing awkwardly, sharing food. Something had shifted, not fully healed, but beginning. When the last worker left, Darren and Kyra sat on the fence, watching the orange light fade across the dunes. You realize, he said quietly, they're going to keep talking. Let them, she murmured. This time, maybe they'll tell the right story. Tali came running from the house, holding a small sprout in her hands. Look! The melon plant had babies! Kyra chuckled, lifting the little girl into her lap. See, Darren? Even your farm believes in family now. He smiled, heart lighter than it had been in years. Guess it caught our bad habits. The three of them sat there until the sun sank completely, the sky turning deep violet. For the first time, the lights of the colony in the distance didn't look hostile. They looked like stars trying to find their way home. Kyra rested her head on Darren's shoulder, her voice a quiet hum. You gave me food once, she whispered. And somehow it turned into a life. He wrapped an arm around her. Not gave, he said. We built it. She smiled against him, eyes closing. Then let's never stop. And as the wind carried laughter and scent of new rain across the desert, the lonely outpost that had once been a place of survival became something else entirely, something alive, defiant, and shared. Months passed. The desert didn't change quickly, but the little farm did. Where bare dust once baked under twin suns, now thin green rows shimmered like hope made visible. The hydro lines hummed. Solar grids gleamed clean. The air smelled faintly of moisture and soil instead of rust and fear. Even the turbines had found a rhythm that almost sounded like music. Kyra called it their song. Each morning, she'd stand on the porch and listen while Tolly chattered beside her, naming the plants like pets. This one's leafy. That one's spiky. Oh, and that one's Grandpa Vine because it looks cranky. Darren grunted as he passed carrying a basket of produce. If they start talking back, I'm moving out. Kyra's tail flicked, amused. Don't worry, human. We've already claimed the bedroom. Tolly gasped. Claimed? Like treasure? Kyra smiled slyly. Exactly. It was impossible to stay serious around them for long. The laughter came easy now, like they'd all forgotten what loneliness sounded like. The colony began to visit again, this time not with suspicion but curiosity. Traders stopped by for melons and fresh water. A Fox folk matriarch brought seeds from the northern dunes. Even Marshal Renna came occasionally, under the pretense of inspection, though everyone knew she just wanted a decent meal and to see how Darren's family experiment was holding up. You two have started something dangerous, Brenna said one evening, sipping stew. People see a human and a fox working together, and think maybe the old rules don't matter anymore. Kyra smirked. Good. Rules get lonely when no one follows them. Renna chuckled. You're lucky he's patient. Kyra leaned closer to Darren, who was pretending to tinker with the solar monitor. Patience? She teased. He's just stubborn. That's different. He looked up with mock offense. You're talking about me like I'm not here. Because you never listen. She shot back, tail flicking across his leg. Renna snorted. And here I thought I'd seen everything. After the marshal left, Kyra leaned on the fence, watching the stars blink awake above the dunes. Her hair shimmered silver in the moonlight. She's wrong, you know, she said softly. We didn't start this. We just remembered how it's supposed to be. Darren joined her, resting his arm along the rail. What's that? People helping people. Doesn't matter what shape their ears are. He smiled. Could put that on the colony sign. Too sentimental, she said, nudging him playfully. Needs more sarcasm. How about Farm of One Idiot and His Fox? Kyra laughed, the sound carrying out over the quiet fields. Perfect. Life became ordinary again, but not the kind of ordinary Darren once knew. It was full of clattering pans, fur on the furniture, and arguments about how to season stew. Sometimes Kyra would steal his tools just to watch him pretend not to panic. Other times, he'd rig small gadgets to make her chores easier, earning her grudging admiration. And every night, when the turbines slowed and the stars came out, they'd sit on the porch steps together, Tolly usually asleep somewhere between them, and talk about everything and nothing. One night, Kyra spoke quietly, almost to herself. When I was little, my mother said foxes follow storms. We chase thunder because we think it hides the next dawn. Sounds exhausting, Darren said. She smiled faintly. It is. But sometimes the storm leads you somewhere worth stopping. He reached over and took her hand. Then maybe you should stay stopped for a while. Kyra didn't answer right away. She looked at their joined hands, then at him. You're bad at being poetic. I'm better at farming. You're better at fixing hearts, too. He blinked, startled. That wasn't in the job description. She leaned her head against his shoulder, voice a whisper. Neither was love. The wind brushed over them, warm and alive. When morning came, the farm woke to a riot of noise, Tolly chasing lizards, turbines creaking, the low hum of pumps. Darren watched the two fox girls dart through the rows, laughter echoing between the hills, and felt a quiet satisfaction settle in his chest. He'd once thought kindness was a liability in a world built on scarcity. But Kyra had shown him it was the only thing that grew stronger the more you gave it. As he turned back toward the house, she waved at him from the field, tail flashing in the sunlight. Hey, farmer! She called. You forgot to water Grandpa Vine. He smiled. Grandpa Vine's on a strict diet. Tolly gasped. You can't starve him, Kyra grinned. See? You're the villain now. Darren raised his hands in defeat. Fine. I'll water Grandpa Vine. Good boy, Kyra teased. He shook his head, muttering, should have traded for quieter company. But as he filled the watering can, he caught himself smiling again, because peace, it turned out, was loud, messy, and full of tales knocking things off tables. And he wouldn't have traded it for anything. Seasons on the colony didn't really change, but the people did. The next cycle brought new settlers, new crops, new laughter. And at the edge of it all, Darren's once-forgotten farm became a small legend. Some came to trade, others to gawk, and a few to ask the question they could never quite say aloud. How did you make it work? Darren always gave the same answer. Patience and good soil. Kyra always added. And better company. Tolly had grown taller, her fur now streaked with pale gold. She ran deliveries for nearby settlers, riding a refurbished crawler Darren had rebuilt from bandit scrap. When she came home dusty and grinning, Kyra would scold her while secretly glowing with pride. I'm not a kid anymore, Tolly would argue. Then stop acting like one, Kyra would reply. Darren, sitting on the porch with a mug of coffee, would just smile. If she crashes that crawler again, you're both fixing it. It became their rhythm. Work, laughter, argument, love, all stitched together in a place that had once been silent. One evening, the three of them gathered on the ridge overlooking the fields. The suns were setting, twin embers melting into the horizon. The air shimmered with the faint hum of life, cicadas, turbines, and faraway voices from the colony that had finally learned to coexist. Tolly lay sprawled on the sand, pointing at clouds. That one looks like a melon, she said. Kyra chuckled. Everything looks like food to you. You raised me that way. True, Kyra admitted, smiling. Darren glanced over at her. She wore one of his old work shirts now, the sleeves rolled high, collar loose around her throat. A few years ago, she would have burned under the sun. Now she looked at home in it. You ever think about leaving? He asked quietly. Kyra turned, eyebrow raised. Leaving you? He smirked. I meant the colony. She considered it, tail curling around her legs. I used to. When we first got here, I thought this place was a cage. But now... She looked at the farm below, the shimmering green against endless red. Now it feels like something we built with our own hands. A home. You don't run from that. Good, Darren said. Because I'm not letting you. Kyra laughed softly and leaned against his shoulder. You say that like you could stop me. Not a chance, he murmured. But I'd try anyway. Later, after Tolly had gone inside, Kyra lingered beneath the night sky. The stars were bright tonight, dozens of constellations either of them could name. Do you ever wonder, she asked, if there are others like us? Out there somewhere? Fox and human. Two worlds that shouldn't fit but do? He looked up, thoughtful. If there aren't, maybe we're the first. She smiled. Then they'll tell stories about us someday. He reached for her hand. They'll get half of it wrong. Good, she said. The truth's too precious to share. They stood there in silence, the warm night wrapping around them. The farm's soft lights glowed below, each one a reminder that compassion had built something stronger than laws or fear. Kyra's ears twitched as she spoke again, voice low. When I first came here, I thought you were just a man with food. I didn't know you'd end up being the one thing I couldn't live without. Darren's throat tightened. And I didn't know a foxwoman could teach me how to live again. Her eyes shimmered in the starlight. We're even then. No, he said quietly. You still owe me one thing. She tilted her head. Oh? What's that? He leaned close, whispering. A promise. That you'll stay. Kyra smiled, eyes closing as she pressed her forehead to his. Then I promise. Until the last melon dies and the last turbine falls silent, I'll stay. The wind moved across the dunes, carrying the scent of rain from faraway clouds. Somewhere behind them, Tolly's laughter rang through the open window. See? Kyra murmured. Even the storm followed us home. Darren tightened his arms around her, resting his chin against her hair. Then let it stay too. They watched the stars until the turbines slowed to a hush. The desert no longer felt empty, it pulsed with quiet life, stubborn and warm. And in that silence, they found what they'd both been chasing all along, not survival, not redemption, just the peace of knowing they weren't alone anymore. Enjoyed the journey? Subscribe now for more Human Meets Alien stories filled with heart, hope, and humor. Would you have helped Kyra and Tali?